And welcome to this interactive webinar, self-leadership for massive success, an essential skill in challenging times. My name is Roberto Dal Corso, and I'm connecting from you in my home office here in Zurich, Switzerland. I just want to thank Emma and Will and the Montfort University for giving us this opportunity to share some what I think is really important information. So thank you for joining us, and I like to give interactive presentations. I like to engage with you, so I also like to have fun. I'm sure you like to have fun, so I might ask you some questions. I'm certainly going to ask you to respond to me, and I hope that you'll be willing to do that so that we might, learn something together as well as hopefully have a bit of fun while we're doing that today. And I know these are really crazy, they're challenging, they're changing times. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is literally, leave everything behind you. These are not normal times. You might be in your office, you might be at home, you might be on public transport. Just leave everything that you have down, put it all aside, just give yourself the opportunity to be present and partake in the workshop. So a couple of things I just want to also I'd like you to consider is, actively participate, engage in the discussions, in the activities. Pretend that you're in a physical classroom, and if you're going to step away for whatever reason, then that'll be great. And if you just type in as you leaving, just so we don't happen to call on you, but that's absolutely great. So let's get started with this. And as we get going, I wanted to say I'm really passionate about sharing this content on self-leadership with you, because in today's world that's changing, I've had the opportunity to speak to many people in the last several months, and people are struggling. So I want to share some ideas with you today, not just because they might be cool or fun or new or interesting, but hopefully to make it as relevant as possible, relevant to what is going on right now in your life, wherever you may be. So over the next 60 minutes or so, I'm going to share some information, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about a model that we use in our self-leadership program. So rather than teach you everything, I'm just going to share some information about, the mindset, the skill sets, the tool sets that you need to have for massive success. And we know from the research supports it that without having the mindset, we'll never have the skill set or the tool set. So it's really important to focus on these three areas, the three aspects of mindset, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And probably many of you, if you've heard of this saying before, you might have heard that success is 80% mindset and 20% strategy or the tactics. If you've heard of that, open up the comments, type in yes, type in something just to let me know that you are out there and that you can hear and see me, and that the technology is working the way it's meant to. So in this time together, I'm going to teach with you some of the mindset, the skill sets, and I hope that you're not only going to use them in these challenging times, but what if we could take these challenging times to maybe learn and practice some new skills, some new technology, new mindsets, and that'll help us in the future to be better off. So, many organizations today, when you look at it, performance is really stalled. And it's stalled because, employees, people, even ourselves in our own life, we don't necessarily know how to ask for what it is that we need, or especially at the right time when we need it. So that's something that, the self-leadership program teaches individuals is, the mindset, the skill set, so that we can be proactive, take the reins of achieving our goals and accelerate our development. So, this is probably even more important now that we're working remotely, working in different parts, and not having the connection we used to have. So, the research also shows that some of the essential skills around mindset and skill sets is really about how do we turn the goals into reality? Because, it's true. I mean, these are crazy times. We're all sitting here in post-COVID. I'm not sure where you're connecting from. As I said, I'm from here in Zurich in Switzerland. Wherever you are, let us know. Type in the town. I'd love to connect and see where you're from. But yeah, in this post-COVID, everyone is going through it at different speeds. So it's really the mindset, the skill set where we can take accountability, go out and ask for what we need to help us be more proactive, engaged in our work, really help you maximize your impact during these challenging times. So if you're a professional, a business owner, an entrepreneur, Well, you might be working for someone. If you're looking at increasing your performance, the productivity, then you're in the right place. You might be working as a manager, a senior leader. You might be even looking for a job at this moment in time because of the crisis and the things going on. So if you're looking to have more satisfaction, in your work, while you're at work, with what you're doing, and you're just tired of feeling frustrated with, the way the current situation, this whole COVID, post-COVID, and all the talk about it is going on, you're looking at increasing your creativity and you just want to grow and you want to drive results, then, this is really the right place for you to be. This is not the place, if you believe you know it all, if you have that mindset where, I like to talk about things, but I don't like to change things, I'm not prepared to try anything different, something new, then, that's probably not for you. I mean, it's not for people who are not prepared to take some emotional risks, because that's where we live life, on the edge of emotional risks, and at the end of the day, if you don't take these risks, you don't take these new opportunities, then, how many more years do you want to carry on living with an unfulfilled life, not achieving the goals that you want? So over the next 60 minutes, I'm going to share some information how you can literally 10x your personal and business results, how you become more high performing, both for yourself and the people around you, and how do you increase the innovation, the productivity, the creativity. So I'm also going to share a template with you and a couple of cool things, fun ideas in the course of it. So, again, as we say, it's really about getting on and doing the things that we want to be doing. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is quickly open it up, because I don't know where you're situated. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'd love to hear from you. And I have a question for you. And, I hope you remember that you hopefully agreed that you were going to partake in this and be engaged. So, I'd really like to know, which out of these 9, and all you need to do is type in 1 to 9, which out of these 9 is your biggest concern right now? It might be yours or someone that but what are some people's biggest concerns? And, really, it could be, you could be answering this for yourself or someone that and it's really, some people are really worried about, the current situation, someone's health, someone's wellness. It could be the kids in the family, which are all at home, and we're trying to manage your life and work all in one thing. Or it could even be, the financial aspects of the current situation that we're in, because, either you might be working reduced hours, short hours, or you might even have lost your job or have had to, even take a crazy pay cut. So, it's really about, these disruptive routines. So if you have children, and children have minds of their own. I got 2 kids, and yes, they generally don't do what you want them to do when you want them to do. So they got minds of their own. And, it could also be that your husband, your wife, your roommate, your better half, you're just getting on each other's nerves 24/7, not being able to get some space and get to do the things you want. Or you might not even be exercising, and quite often, you look at the media around us, and it might be the fear, it might be the anxiety, because we're really overloaded with bad news, TV, radio, press, everywhere. Unemployment rates, going through the roof, economy going down. It's absolutely crazy times, and again, you might be working from home. You could well be working longer hours, and it takes longer to get things done. So it can be stressful, and how do we go about it so that you don't feel at a disadvantage? But how do we go about taking advantage of these opportunities right now? So, I'd love to hear if you can just type in 1, 2, 3, all the way through to 9. And of course, 9 is the famous other. If you do type in number 9 because you're thinking other, then I would just love to hear, what it is that you're thinking about in the other. So please go ahead, type into the comments now between 1 and 9. I'd love to see some comments coming through. And I'm just going to quickly go and have a look at the chat here. I might have her on the wrong one. Okay, perfectly. Okay. Oh, so that was something I always wanted to have a look at, because, quite often one of the biggest interests I get, one of the biggest ones that come up in the poll with other groups that we've done this before, it's really around health and wellness, and even though this is not about health and wellness, the research does show that change, it's really critical, because when you talk about change, the change we're going on, when people go through change, they're often concerned about what is this change about? Why do I need to go through it? And, the biggest problem is that we don't share our personal concerns. So, it's how is this change going to affect me? And it's really affect me personally. So, these are some of the things that I wanted to share. Just wanted to get a sense of what is out there in terms of some of the things that are in your biggest concern, what is in your mind. Now, we're going to do another poll in a short while, but I just wanted to share 3 research findings with you. And I think that, these are some of the most important research findings relevant of the last 5, 7, 10 years, because prior to that, when you look at research done, it was really about leadership and not about self-leadership. So not self-leadership in itself. And 3 findings, or the main findings that come out in the research, is the first one is that, proactive participation of self-leaders is an essential ingredient for the successful execution in any organizational initiative or change effort. So, if that you can relate to, then absolutely keep that in mind, because, basically what that is saying is that you can put all of the grand plans, the grand schemes in place, spend millions in your organization or setting up a business. You can spend a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, but at the end of the day, the number one ingredient is whether it's going to be successful or not. The number one ingredient is do I become proactive and make the changes, do the actions that are necessary for success? So that's the number one. It's really about being proactive and doing something to take the action, because, everything comes out of action. If we're not doing action and we're not moving forward, then by default, we are moving backwards. So this is really critical, about self-leadership. And it's so much more important, I think, than we quite often give it credit with. Because in the past, as I said, leadership in life, in organization, was really leadership within an organization. But we're not talking about a leadership in an organization, which this can be part of, but we're really talking about self-leadership. So, with so many of us now working remotely from home, not being in the office, on a constant basis, then, self-leadership becomes more true now, I believe, than ever before. A second thing that some research shows us is that, there are key proactive self-leadership behaviors that we know make a difference. So, when we talk about self-leadership, we can actually, narrow down, identify those types of behaviors that self-leaders exemplify in order to be successful in themselves, in their organization, to help them contribute, to moving forward. So whatever they do, they're trying to do it at their best, and that's what makes a change. So if you think about some of the major changes which we've just gone through in the last several months, well, I'm sure in the audience we've got people from several different countries, because it's going out globally. So if you think of the world, we're all going through change globally, but at different rates. Some of us are still in lockdown. I think of my family in South Africa. Some in Europe are in post-COVID, coming out of the crisis. In some areas, we're actually regressing and going backwards. So we're all going through change, but we're going through change at different rates. And I believe that never before, have the proactive behaviors of self-leaders been more important than what it is today. So, you might be asking yourself, well, what really is self-leadership? Because, leadership is one of those words. Doesn't mean a lot, but yet at the same time means something different to everyone. So, I believe that self-leadership is having the mindset, the skill set with the hands, as well as the tool set to be successful. It really means that, we take initiative, we accept our responsibility for our own success, be it in life, be it in the workplace, in our personal life. So, quite often, one of the things that people say to me, they go, hey, Roberto, I am not a leader. I don't have a title. I don't lead a team. No, I'm not a leader. This is, why am I even listening to this? This is not for you. It's not for me. I'm not a leader. So why? And to me, it's important to remember that, leadership is any time that you're trying to influence the thoughts, the behavior, the actions of someone around you. Now, you could be a mother or a father. It could be your parents. It could be a colleague at work. So I believe there is no time in the world when you're actually not being a leader, because at any given moment in time, we're trying to influence our friends, our family, our colleagues at work. And hopefully, we're going to talk about this later, but hopefully we're trying to affect them and influence them in a positive way. So I just wanted to share that with you. The third one that research shows is that really these proactive self-leadership skills can be taught. So self-leadership really is a skill. It's no different to, learning how to ride a bike. It's no different to playing football or rugby. You've really got to take time, apply it, use it to become a master at the skill. So, some people, may seem to be born as self-leaders, and that might be because they're more extrovert or maybe just more comfortable in asking for what they need, or you might have bumped across some of them just more okay and open in making a complaint and complaining about things. The fact is, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, direct or indirect, self-leadership skills can be taught and can be learned by anyone. And I think this is also absolutely powerful, and I hope that it's a powerful thing for you. So, I really want to, if you do get a chance, use the comments, the chat box, type in 1, 2, or 3. Which of these 3 of these findings do you find most relevant to what is happening in the world today? And, I'll give everyone a second to do that. But, it's really about self-leadership being, an essential skill, in our life, in our organization right now. So you might have a 1, a 2, or a 3. You can go ahead and choose. Let us know. Don't let us know 2 or 3. I'd just love to know what one of them is. Some of the findings that, people find quite often most relevant, and you might be surprised or not, because you might have thought about it, is number 1, is the fact that, and that's also exciting to me, is that people think that self-leadership is of major importance. The fact is, the research also shows that in organizations would be better off if they change some of their training, change some of their efforts, and applied it more towards self-leadership instead of just focusing it on management and leadership training at a higher level. So, self-leadership, absolutely. It's really about, when we come down to it, what do we do during these times? People also understand that the fact that we need to lead ourselves before we can lead anyone else, and just think of it, you've got to master the internal world before you can absolutely take control and master the external world. So again, I say that you need to take control of yourself, lead yourself before you can lead anyone in this life. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Rachel, for putting your chats in the comment there. Absolutely appreciate it. I'm glad you agree that it's number 1. But if you didn't, I would have loved to have heard about it anyway. So, just quickly jumping onto a model that we teach in the self-leadership program is, as I said, about having the mindset, skill set, the tool set. And the research supports that we really need to have all 3 of these skills. So it's important, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time, is focusing on these 3 skills, because by the end of this, I really want you to be able to make a major shift in your life, a major shift in your personal side, whether it's in business, whether it's in the work environment. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is challenging assumed constraints. Now, an assumed constraint is a belief. It's a belief that's holding you back. It may be a belief based on a past experience. It may be a belief based on something that someone told you, way, way back. And it may even be a belief that you heard from someone else. So I virtually want you to raise your hand, and I know that we virtual, so virtually raise your hand, if one of your beliefs might be, because we've probably all have heard this one, is don't talk to who? Don't talk to strangers. Why not? Why shouldn't we be talking to strangers? Well, strangers could be dangerous. We don't know their intentions. That's one of the ones that we quite often hear. And yet, what do we do most of our days in the lives? We're on public transport, we go into the office, guess what? We talk to strangers. But yet, way back somewhere, we once heard or believed about or been told by our parents, don't talk to strangers. Now, for very good reasons with what's going on. But that's just to give you an idea of, what are some of the belief systems, what are the assumed constraints that you might have, and especially when it comes into, life today. And it's, again, as I say, it's because something you might have read, something you might have heard. So today we're going to hopefully challenge some of your consumed constraints, and I've listed these out there because, these are some of the common assumed constraints that I've had in my head. And I think I've gone through all of them and a lot more at one point in time in my life. And, it's in my head because that's how I came up with this list. And the first one is the fear of failing. It's the fear of taking a risk, because yes, risks can be, risky. They can be financially risky. They can also be emotionally risky. So, the fear of failure is a big one. What about the fear of finding out that you can't do it? The fear of, we're not good enough. We're not perfect enough. And, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I've gone through this one, and it's really about get over the fear of what other people think about you, what you think other people are going to say about you, because those are just assumed constraints. So what about, fear of embarrassing yourself for doing or trying something new? So these are all some of the fears that I've had over the years. Fear of losing resources when things go wrong. I mean, especially in these times, you could be fearing losing your job, or you might have already lost your job and you're thinking of, what about the income and how do I pay the bills? The fear of not having enough resources. So these are some of the fears I've gone through. And the reason I ask that is because it's really to set us up for this one is, and I'm going to ask, what is the cost to you emotionally? What's it going to cost you spiritually, to your family, your kids, to, the generation after us, if you don't challenge your assumed constraints today? And I say that, today, we need to challenge some of our belief systems, some of our assumed constraints. What are some of the assumptions that you might be holding on to, and like really tightly holding on to, which were from, your early years, and they assume constraints or challenges about the success in life or the success of us. And we really need to change them. We really need to be challenging those, and quite often the problem with assumed constraints, we believe them, but we don't actually think about and sit back and go, is this real? I mean, like the simple example of don't talk to strangers. When we were growing up, I never questioned it. It's only now it's like, it doesn't really make sense. But, this is what it's about, challenging some assumed constraints. So, what might be one of the consumed constraints, that's holding you back today? And this is what we're going to focus on, because how do we go about taking one of your assumed constraints, one of your belief systems, let's challenge it so we can become more proactive, we can become more successful, we can really, go out and get what it is that we want and that we feel that we want. So how do we go about doing that? So let's start by challenging an assumed constraint. And I'm going to give you an example, but I'm really going to give you a tool, a template, which is something that we teach in the self-leadership workshop. And, I'm going to say to you, try it, test it. I'm not going to say to you, trust me, this is going to work if you do it. But I will say, I will challenge you and challenge your belief, your consumed constraints to try this. Because once you try it, once you test it, then you'll know if it works or if it doesn't. And then you'll have data, and then you'll know if what I've said, is true. But what I want you to do is have some fun with it. So, take one of your potential or even a very real assumed constraint, such as, and in this time, I'm going to say, I'm not good working from home. So that could be an assumed constraint, and you write it out. Then what we do is we go to the second step of the template, and we go, now we flip it on its head, because basically we're going to turn it into the opposite, and then we're going to tie it into some value or a purpose, So this one can become, I work effectively from home because, and then you add in a value or a workplace purpose. I genuinely care about my clients, my family, my customers, my colleagues, my co-workers, and I want to find creative ways to be proactive with providing them, the best service possible. So, once you've taken the assumed constraint, you flipped it on its side, you now have what I would say a really powerful statement, and it's about working from home in this case. So, and once you've come up with, flipping it over, we now need to come up with an action step that we can start applying straight away, right here, right now. And in this case, each day I'm going to send 3 of my clients a message checking in on their health and well-being, and finding some ideas of how I might be able to help them and, serve them better. So, what we've done is we've taken something very negative, I'm not good at working from home, and we've been able to flip it and apply an action to it, and it becomes a really powerful purpose that we have, something that we can utilize to move forward. So, I hope that you will try this, and I'm going to say, go out and challenge all of your assumed constraints. Even if you don't know you have an assumed constraint, go out and challenge it anyway, because we've all got so many that are just running on autopilot, and we don't quite often challenge them and even think about them. So, go ahead and challenge your assumed constraints. Recently, things opened up in Zurich. We did a live workshop, and one of the young ladies who was on the workshop, she came afterwards and wrote me this note, and I had to, I wanted to share it with you because it's really about what we've been talking about, and she went on and said, that I've learned, that having the mindset to be proactive can push you past procrastination, avoidance, taking actions on the things that you fear, you don't like, or have little passion or motivation for. So, the payoff is really the kind of peace of mind that you get, and it removes the worry that you may simply have about making a decision or taking action. And if you think of the times we're living in now, how often there's fear, how often there's procrastination or avoidance, it's just easier to binge on Netflix or on social media when you know that you should be heading out to the gym, or maybe, doing those couple of extra phone calls to the family or to your customers. So there's so many things that we need to challenge ourselves into doing better in. So, the next thing I want to have a look at is, it's also something of part of the model. And again, it's always on the mindset of the self-leadership mindset. It's about activating points of power. Now, I'd like to explain a little bit about what I mean points of power, because, points of power, again, one of those words could mean a variety of things to different people. So, the first thing about, just think of the word when I say power. What comes to mind? Let me say that again. Power. What's the first association that you come up? I mean, do you think about money? Do you think about control? Do you think about, influencing people, making people do what you want them to do, forcing them, what comes to mind, and quite often, a connotation that we have about power is most often negative. But what if we had to think about power that comes from water? Think of a waterfall. What can a waterfall do? One, it can be absolutely beautiful. The water we can drink the water, but it can also generate electricity. So, again, if you think about the power of the sun can be negative. It can certainly burn you if you sit in the sun too long, or it can give you a nice tan if you sit in there just the right time. But it can also convert, the sun power into electricity, solar power. So the sun is not positive or it's negative. It's absolutely how you use the power. So, again, I know that on a sunny day in Zurich, the sunshine brightens up my day. I just feel lighter, more optimistic. I feel that everything's possible and the world's just a better place. So, power in its nature is not negative. It's not positive. It's not neutral. It's positive or negative in how we use it. So start to think of power in a different way. Think of the power as the sole advantage of using power is to do more good in this world. Just think about it. And, a lot of leaders, when I look at them, that one doesn't come across. But think of it, the sole advantage of having power is to do more good to the people around you. So, I want to share 5 different ideas or ways that you might be powerful. The first one really is, I call these the points of power. So, and again, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no better, there's no worse, and because I'm going to ask you, out of these 5 points of power, I'm going to ask you, which one do you have active, or which do you think you have active right now? But let me share a little bit about what these are. So the first one is position power. This is where, contrary to what we were saying earlier, you actually have a title. You have the authority. You can discuss strategies, budgets. You can hire, you can fire people. Not many of us today, have position power. Most of us are not mega leaders. We are just ordinary people who go to work and have families, colleagues, and friends. So position power is one of those things. Task power, on the other hand, let's have a look at task power, because task power is when you have power over a particular task or a job that you do. So, let's say a friend of mine, Alessandro, and he's responsible for taking phone calls for his CEO. So let's call him a personal assistant. And, if you say to a personal assistant, and I'm not sure what the correct terminology is to use it, administrative assistant, executive, secretary. There's so many different words. But, I was doing a training course up in Germany recently, and a young Russian lady was part of the group, and her accent was quite hard for me to understand. But she had, surprisingly enough, come to and did a lot of her studies in the UK. So she turned around to me and said, "I'm a general dog's body." And I had never heard that expression. So first I didn't actually understand it. And I heard it a couple of times from her. So eventually during one of the breaks, I pulled her aside and said, I said, "Sorry, tell me, what is a general's dog's body?" And she said, "Well, a general dog's body is a person who has no position, no authority in the workplace. But, we like the dogs, lying around, and sometimes they feed us and sometimes they don't. That's us with the dog's body, and, we have no position power. We have no authority in the workplace. So, we're not even on the corporate ladder of success. We're the thing that people have to step over to get to the corporate ladder of success before they can start climbing it." And I thought, wow, that is such an interesting assumed constraint. Because, think about it. If I had to speak to, when I was working in corporate, speak to my sales team, and I had to say to them, "Who is the most powerful person you need to see today?" And they would say, "Well, generally it would be the person who is going to make the decision, give me the order so we can generate some revenue and sales for the organization." I'd say, "True. Who is the one person that can stop you from seeing the decision maker?" And most often they would say, "Yeah, the personal assistant, the executive assistant, the general's dog body." So, wow, the general's dog's body actually has a lot of task power in what they do. So, these are some of the things, and we're just going to carry on sharing a few more. So, hopefully this tends to make a lot of sense. And I've actually skipped one slide too far. So hopefully this starts to make a lot of sense for you. Another one is personal power. Now, personal power is you might have interpersonal skills. You might have leadership skills. Maybe you're an informal leader. Maybe you're the kind of person that you're just great at listening, asking questions, and people come to you and ask you for your advice or ask you for what would you do in circumstances. So maybe you have that charisma that, you walk into a room and you turn everyone's heads. People just gravitate towards you. We've all seen them. You go to a party, you go to a pub, you've seen those people we all just naturally gravitate towards. We don't really understand why. So, personal power could also be being really beautiful. I know, for example, in the US, there was a study showing that if you were 6 foot tall or taller, so I guess 6 foot is somewhere over there, because I'm short, about 5 foot something, so 6 foot is way above me. But the study showed that, if you 6 foot or taller, you actually moved up the corporate ladder faster. So me being short, growing up in South Africa, not being tall or American, I decided, being short is going to be a personal point of power. And why do I say that? Because, if you're short, people don't expect many things of you. So when you do something, people go, "Wow, and you're short." So I like that. So it's always good. You're always surprising people. So you really have to define a point of power the way you want to define it. You have to see it in a way that's going to help you achieve your goals, help you get to, what you want to be doing, help to drive your success. So maybe you have relationship power. So this is, being connected to other people who have power. Maybe you know of a mentor, a lecturer, or maybe you know of someone in the workplace that you've known for years. I'm a good mentor of mine, my first boss actually in the corporate world. Mark, he's become the senior VP at Kroger, one of the largest retail stores in the US. And I know that whenever Mark was around, just by being able to name drop his name, I suddenly had connection and relationship power. Because, if I would go to anywhere in the world to one of our organizations and say, "Mark suggested that I speak to you," guess what? They made time. And it was just because of Mark and not because of who I was. So you can certainly, that's relationship power, and it's absolutely important. So I'm excited because I want to hear it. And obviously knowledge power is, I think that's the one we can all relate to. It's, having the experience, the expertise, the credentials of knowledge, something that that maybe other people don't know in certain areas, specific niches, anything you might know. So, these are 5 points of power. And, one of my questions I'd like to ask you is, which point of power, can I activate right now? Or let me say that slightly differently. Which point of power do you think you have active right now? And again, I'd love you to type that into the chat box. I'd love to hear what PowerPoint do you think you have active right now? And Andrea says personal power, awesome. Emma says task power. So, if there's any others, drop those in. Would love to hear, what your thoughts on what points of power you have active right now. And I'm hoping that this makes a lot of sense, and again, personal power, that's one of the powers that, I think we all want, but yet at the same time, it's one of those powers that, no one can take away from you. Knowledge power, also same thing. People can't take your personal power and they can't take your knowledge power away. So that's an important one. Position power, on the other hand, can always be taken away at any time, And there was this U.S. Navy Admiral, Theodore Blanche, this was back, I think, in probably the Second World War. And he said, the best place to have is to have position power and never to have to use it. So just think about it, having position power, but never to have to use it, and, he went on to say, that it's because we have so many other powers that we can use to lead and influence the people around us. So, that's what we're kind of looking at, is what position power, what task power, what power do you have that you can utilize, and that's what I found that, for me, with what's going on, I believe relationship power is probably one of the ones that I find most important, because if you think about it, relationship power can open many doors. It can open doors to different resources, but whichever power you have active right now, don't forget that there are other powers which you might not have active. But how do we go about changing this? How do we go about growing and contributing and utilizing our power? So just want to jump back quickly. So, another one, again, use the chat box and say, well, which are the points of power do you need to develop? So it's not the one that you've got active right now, but which point of power do you think is important and that you would like to activate and become more powerful, to be utilizing it more? By all means, I'd love to use your comments. Let's, see what's coming in on the chat, use those, because, again, as I said, at a time of social distancing, there's so many different powers. I know we've mentioned relationship power and opening the doors, but also relationship power is one of those things that, now at the time with, I'm not going to use the overused word social distancing, let's just call it distancing. With distancing going on, well, relationship power is something that is very special to us during this time. So, I'd love to hear what points of power that you would like to activate in the future. And I hope this makes sense to you, because I believe that, not realizing your own power can be your greatest assumed constraint. How many of you know that if you were to live your life over again, you could do more than what you've done so far? How many years, do you want to work in a job or do things that you don't really want to go to? And during this time, this is the time where you can get so much more, so reach out to people, take advantage of the power that you have, because you could be doing a lot of different things to help in different ways, even in this times of social distancing, so I do want to move on because I've got a lot to share with you, but it's really important. Challenge your assumed constraints to have a look at what is it that you're potentially leaving behind, because, if you've ever thought or you've ever said, and I'm just thinking of, working with an entrepreneur later on this afternoon, and the first time I met him, he said to me, Robbie, I had an idea and someone stole it, and now they're making so much money, and and I'll never come up with another idea. And to me, again, that's just an assumed constraint. So, you've got to find the motivation in these tough times. And it's the motivation to remain resilient. It's the motivation to have the self-confidence, take the step back, have a look at different points of power, have a look at your assumed constraints. How do we bundle this together so that we can utilize it? Mastering the mindset, the skill set, be it in our work, so that we can be more productive, more effective, more successful, whether it's working at home with our kids or with our colleagues and friends. So these are all important, and I know there's not a one size fits all, But absolutely, these are some of the points of power that I find are the most important. And I'm hoping that you will find them, try them, put them on, wear them, and have fun and enjoy being more powerful than what you were before you started, because it's increasing our knowledge. That's going to increase our productivity. Now, I do apologize. I didn't introduce myself. Yes, my name is Roberto Dal Corso. A good, strong Italian name, even though I grew up and was born in Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm curious, any Italians or South Africans on this call? And I know that, Italians can be a little bit crazy at times. So if there's any crazy Italians on the call, then chat in and say, yes, crazy Italian like myself, because we all know that Italians can be a little bit loud and a little bit crazy at times, and I just wanted to share something with you, because it's really not about me, but just something, just so you know where I'm coming from. As I said, I grew up in South Africa, moved to Europe, ran a multinational organization here in Switzerland for a number of years, and I was actually on my way back from London. We had gone up on a Tuesday, flying back on the Wednesday morning. Tuesday night, gala event, Frost and Sullivan at one of the Lani hotels in London, and we just received a leadership award. And I was there with my sales director, and we were flying back, and no sooner did we land that, Ty says he's a crazy Australian. Cool, Ty, glad to have crazy Australians with crazy South Africans and Italians. But sorry, going back to, the story I was sharing. As I land in Zurich, there's a message on my phone call from my CEO saying, hey, Robbie, come in and see me first thing. So straight into his office, we sit down, and he goes, do you know Brazil? I'm like, yeah, well, it's a country on the continent of South America. Yeah. He says, well, they got financial difficulties company-wise, and we need to help them. I said, okay, so do you want me to push sales? What initiatives are we going to do? And he says, no, you don't understand. I want you to cut 5 people's jobs. And I guess I must have given him that look, something like that, because he looked at me and he goes, Robbie, don't be soft. It's not personal. It's just business. Get it done. And by the way, it's Wednesday lunchtime. Have it done by Friday. So, I walked out of that one going, okay, let me get this straight. You want me to get rid of 5 people in my team, which I know have got families, and I know them all personally well. I can tell you the names of their kids. And I'm going to go to them and say, by the way, I'm getting rid of you. Nothing to do with, you being a bad person or not performing. Nothing personal. It's just good business. But thank you so much. And I thought, this is just not right. And naturally, needless to say, that was one of my last days in corporate, because I did leave after that, even though I had done it before, but I don't know why that time was different. And I walked out of there going, hell no, because, business is personal. It's, this is personal. It's not just business. This is personal. We live in a world of relationships and people and intimacy. So, that's where I went out and decided to start my own company. And in doing that, I achieved 2 of my biggest life dreams. One was opening up my own business. Another one was living in Switzerland. So I've achieved both. So I'm looking for a third one, and coming out of the corporate environment, I have to say it was an exciting corporate environment, because I'd achieved more than I thought possible, traveled to like 35 or 7 different countries. And, then I set up my own business. And then you can imagine some of these assumed constraints were coming in. And, and that's why I really enjoy spending time, with people, with teams, with organizations, because, I really want to help people drive results, maximize their impact. How do we go about turning your goals into reality so that when organizations are thriving and not surviving, well, we don't need to get rid of people. And worst case, if we absolutely have, which I don't want to, if we have to get rid of people, let's give them skills so that they can become more powerful in their own right. So when they do go to a company, which, if maybe we can't appreciate them, maybe our competitors will appreciate them and really do well with them. So, that's just wanted to share that with you. So absolutely passionate and love what I do. So, going back to, a model on the self-leadership, on the mindset, the third one is really it's the skill of being proactive. And proactive, as we mentioned earlier, anyone can learn it. So, the first place to look is how proactive are you is, look at your calendar, your credit card statement. Look at what you browse on social media or on the internet. What does that say about the commitments you have? And I'm not just saying that, to make light of it, but absolutely, if we start to compromise on learning and growing, and we don't take action in what we feel is important, if we're not leading, our family, our friends, our colleagues, if we're not playing a bigger game, then, what are we doing? And it was Richard Branson, I think, who said that, either you're living life on the edge, so living life on the edge, or you're just taking up space. So to me, that was, really, it stuck with me all these years, because I often have to stop and ask myself, am I just taking up space? Or am I living on the edge? And to me, living on the edge is not, climbing in hot air balloons and trying to shoot off to the moon like Richard does. But to me, living on the edge is, am I inspiring people? Am I helping people? Am I motivating them to be bigger and greater than what they are today? So that's really about being proactive, because we need to be proactive. So, I just like you to think about, what is the best work experience that you've ever had, as well as also what is the worst work experience that you've ever had. So just think about these for a couple of seconds: the best experience you've had in the work environment and the worst experience you've had in the work environment. And while you're thinking about that, if you're like most of us, probably your best times were the ones where you were getting what you needed, you were being successful, you were achieving things. And, probably the worst of times, being the opposite, is when you weren't getting what you needed met. So that's an important one, and what we're going to also talk about is, how do I go about being more successful? How do we go about getting the direction, the support that we need when we need it, so that, we can have more of these best of times? Because quite often, I believe the problem is, we're not proactive ourselves. We're just kind of sitting back, lazy boy on the couch, and waiting for someone to help us and guide us. And I don't believe that's the right proactive approach, So what we need to do in order to make and create the best of times really is, we need to be proactive. We need to go out and get the direction and support that you need. And I believe that's absolutely really important. So to create the best of times, get the direction, get the support that you need. And again, we talked about who are leaders, but it's also important to remember that a leader isn't necessarily someone that's a mentor, a coach, or someone that you work to. I mean, a leader is absolutely anyone that can give you the direction and the support that you need. And that's why I say, you're being a leader yourself any moment in time, because either you can give direction and support to someone in your tribe, someone in your organization, or they can in terms. And they might have position power, or they might not. But we're all leaders, and the important part is that anyone can do it. Anyone can do it, and anyone can also be a leader in that respect. So, when you go out and proactively, get the direction, get the support that you need, it's really in everyone's best interest. It's in your best interest. It's in the organization's best interest. It's really in everyone's best interest that you get the direction, you get the support. And I just want to share something a little bit about what the research also says, because research actually says that if we take proactive steps each day, we have less stress. We tend to have more energy. And what can we do with that? Well, you can tackle a challenge. You can tackle a challenge. You can be resilient. You can overcome things. So I've, got a challenge for you today. And I know it's already kind of Wednesday lunchtime. So I'm going to say, okay, 2.5 days by the end of the week. So you got 2.5 days. I want you to, and you can do this in a couple of ways. I want you to either phone someone, email someone, Skype them, SMS them, whatever your tool of reference is. I want you to be proactive, and I want you to go out and ask them for some feedback. And you're probably going, okay, what feedback do you want me to ask them? And I want you to go out and ask them and say, well, okay, we were recently doing, a Teams call last week. I was trying to get this point across. Can you give me some feedback on how successful, was I doing on that? Did the point come across? Or, how would you go about doing it differently next time? But I want you to go out, pick anything that's happened this week so far, and go out and get some feedback. Get some feedback from someone, a colleague, a friend, a mentor, a boss, anyone you want. Get some feedback on how they thought you did, how you could do it differently. Just get some feedback, because I believe feedback is the breakfast of champions. I'll say it again, breakfast of champions is feedback. So, and research also tends to show that simply being proactive and asking for feedback doesn't always necessarily improve things, because research shows that 61% of leaders who have been trained in giving feedback, believe it or not, don't like giving feedback. So, more than likely your boss, the person you report to, if he's statistically 6 out of 10, well, you've got a good chance that he doesn't like giving feedback, even if he's been trained in giving feedback. And, the vast majority of these people also found that giving feedback had more negative impact than positive ones. And what I mean by that, it's not that, it's negative in the effect of the feedback that they had to give or the results that they had to give. But, quite often they just found that giving feedback was not accepted the right way, was not taken in the right way. People generally aren't quite open to feedback. I mean, I take it in my personal life, if my wife comes to me and gives me some feedback and says, you didn't you didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher this morning. Well, I might not like that feedback, or, whatever it is. So, go out, ask for feedback, because people don't generally like to give feedback, even though if they've been trained in it. On the other hand, I also know that feedback is critical, and especially if it's done on a regular basis, whether it's with your manager, your team, go and say, I need some feedback. How did I do today? How did I do this week? What could I do differently? And also, if you're a manager, what about asking the people that work for you, ask your team how you did? I mean, as a manager, I know I quite often did things that my team didn't like or irritated them. So, I would often ask them and say, what did I do that you didn't appreciate, you didn't like, or that I could have done differently? And this is really, the feedback loop is really about growing. So, I'm going to challenge you to be proactive, and I'm going to ask you, remember the challenge, 2.5 days, by the end of this week, I want you to have contacted someone, phone or email, ask them for some feedback on something that you did this week. So take that. I'd love to hear how you get along with it, because if you do, it would be absolutely great. I'd certainly love to hear how it gets along. So just to remember, when you're out there working with your colleagues, your family, your boss, your peers, not all of us are mind readers. And, even though we are proactive and we go out and ask for things we need, feedback is what we need in order to create the best of times, but then you have to ask for it. It's not simply fair to think that, people know what you need. And, let me give you another example, another assumed constraint. How many of you that work or have a boss and your boss gets paid more than you, which is probably the normal case? Now, you might be thinking and going, well, my boss, he's superior to me, he's getting paid more than me, so he should know more than I do. So he should know what I need. But no, he can't read your mind. So unless you're going out there and asking, you're not going to get it. Because remember, not even the ones that know us best, the ones that love us the most, our spouses, our parents, they love us the most, and even they can't read our minds. So, it would be unfair of us to think that the other people around us should be able to read our minds, because that's absolutely not the case. So just quickly, did a workshop in Frankfurt recently, and again, I was speaking to Jill, and Jill is a lady that started up a consultancy firm here in Zurich, and I met her in Frankfurt. And while we were there, it immediately came across that she was absolutely passionate about what she wanted to do, but at the same time, she just felt so overwhelmed. And you could hear that, she was going, yeah, but I don't know this and I don't know that. So she, when she looked at her assumed constraints and started to challenge them, she was actually afraid to go out and ask for help. Again, it's what are the people are going to think of me? I'm going to be embarrassed. Oh, and what if I do this? And if I'm not wearing my makeup right? And it's really, and that's what life is about. And that's where self-leadership, the training comes in, because, how do we become more proactive, more confident, doing what it is that we need to do, when the time is right. So I know we've taken up nearly an hour, and I do want to have Q&A because that to me is the most fun interactive part. But I do have a couple of quick slides that I want to share. I know I'm giving you too much, but quite often organizations don't execute well. They don't deliver the results. The goals don't happen. And this is usually when people aren't taking the initiative. People aren't being as effective as they could be, So whether it's a project or a task or a goal, quite often projects fail or stall, because people don't know how to ask for what they need when they need it. So, and research also shows that the other half of the equation is that, people quite often feel stagnant in their jobs, and it shows that, 1 out of 3 people do their jobs and absolutely nothing more. And, speaking to a friend who's in such a situation, we were having a cup of coffee, and he said to me, Robbie, it's the worst situation to be in. He says, because it's the golden handcuffs. I've got a job. I'm grateful for it. I get paid. I can look after the family with it. He says, but I hate it. I don't like going there. It's a pain just to get up and go there. I can't motivate myself. So he feels absolutely stagnant, and that's what the research shows, And again, from the US as well as from Europe, it shows that in Europe, less than 55% of the people at work are actively engaged. And I say actively engaged because 16% are absolutely disengaged and are not enjoying what they do. So, very much, whether it's in Europe or in the US, statistics, the research shows that individuals in organizations, when you walk down your office, if you allowed back in the office, quite often you're going to land up meeting people, some that are absolutely engaged and want to help you, some that are sitting on the fence and going, yeah, okay, I need to be here, and other ones who are actively going to try and stop you from doing what you want because they don't want to be there. So, how do we take this and change it? Because if we can change our assumed constraints, we can find our points and positions of power, and we can do a lot of things differently. So imagine how resilient you and your organization and your business would be if you could, absolutely have the skills, the self-confidence to go out and ask for what is needed when you need it without, the unnecessary guidance and wasting time, and I believe that everyone deserves the best. Everyone deserves the best boss they can. Everyone deserves to learn how to be the best in themselves, to contribute, to make a difference. And people, at the end of the day, people are the past, the present, and the future of our organization, of our society. So, the more that as organizations we can invest in our people to grow now, the probability of setting up the organization for success tomorrow is going to be much, much higher. And just quickly touching on some of the positive aspects that we've seen in organizations from self-leadership who have really gone out and embraced it. Obviously, accelerated development. Self-leaders tend to take control of their development. They ask for the direction, and they generally move up the learning curve much, much faster. What about higher performance? Empowerment, self-leaders that are committed and engaged. They constantly work, play hard, work hard, but they're always increasing, performance across the organization. Personal accountability, that goes with it. Self-leaders are not only, held accountable, but they actually go out and hold themselves accountable for achieving their goals, for achieving their success, both inside the organization as well as outside of the organization. And again, increased innovation because, empowered self-leaders know how to overcome challenges, know how to be resilient, know how to solve problems. Nothing fears them. We're all feared, but again, we take action. We become proactive in spite of that fear, in spite of standing with, the deer in the headlights. We still go out and take action. We still go out and do things. So that's absolutely important. And, last one, this is not what I wanted to show you. So, I see we're going to be running out of time, so I don't want to run out of time. So, it's really, self-leadership is about teaching individuals, really at all levels of the organization, of how to become empowered. How do we take responsibility? How do we take initiative for our own success? and that's really, we give people the mindset, the skill set, we set them up for what they need for success. In the program that, the information that I've shared with you really comes out of a research-based approach on how to deliver, and how do we develop self-leaders. It's one of the most taught after leadership models in the world. It's based out of that. So it's really interesting. And, self-leadership it's something, for everyone, because it's someone who's committed to really making a difference. It's not there if you don't want to change the world. If you're a talker, then it's not for you. So self-leadership is really taking leadership of yourself, leading yourself before you can influence, communicate, and lead anyone around you. So, if you're gonna learn a model, a system, then there's going to be a way that will give you new ideas on how to stay connected with the people around you, how to communicate, how to influence, with your teams, the people you choose to spend the rest of your life with, your tribe. So it's something that, these skills you get to use forever and a day. It's not just a one time, and the method that we've shown is actually, we look at action plans, initiatives, we look at the goal setting as well. And it's really about, giving you the confidence of turning goals into reality, if that's what you want. It's how do you increase the productivity, effectiveness of, people working remotely, people at different stages of our post-COVID, So self-leadership really is about, the mindset, the skill set to become proactive self-starters. It's, again, as we said, asking for direction and support, asking for feedback, and then they go out and sell their solutions because they have the confidence to go out and do it. So it's and it's really the vibe. Let me say that again. It's really designed as a live virtual workshop. So just a quick question: would it be okay if I shared a little bit of information about this workshop that I have got running? If someone's interested, would love to share something with it. If not, then we'll move straight into the Q&A. So I will leave it up to you. You guys are the people that we need to get and solicit information from, and you're the ones that I'd like to give the most information about. So while you pull out your chat and quickly type into it, I just wanted to share one thing about goal setting, because I know it's not something we looked at it, but if you look at Harvard said that people who go out and formally set goals, what I mean by that is they're documented, they're written down, they're clear, concise, increase the achievement of 35% in order to get to those goals. So you 35% got a higher chance of achieving goals if you've actually got them written down and know them, and you can write this down. You're also probably 42% more likely to achieve them if you're not only clear, concise, have them documented, have them planned out, but start to take action on them, as well as then follow up on them. So, making decisions, it's not about what you do in your head, because you can get into that looping process, which can quite often slow you down rather than speed things up. So, it's really about how do we go about finding and hitting the potential so that, we can be more productive. We can become the heroes in our own story, the heroes for our families, for our friends, because, I think this world is in desperate needs of heroes. And I don't say negative heroes, but I say self-leader heroes who want to go out and do more for themselves, for the people around them, make an impact. That's what we're here for. It's really to make an impact. So these are some of the things. Perfect. And so if I can, I'd like to share something a little bit. So, in a couple of weeks in October, you can write this date down, October the 27th. Is really when your life would change. I mean, we've got a workshop where we're going to focus on the mindset, the skill set, the tool sets. And, it's the self-leadership really is a virtual live instructor-led program that unfolds over 3 2-hour sessions. They're virtual sessions, but learners, you're going to learn how to go through an engaging experience that's, both using your instructor-led responses, time to reflect, group activities, and lots of time to practice new skills in a safe environment, because quite often, if we're not in a safe environment, we don't want to practice new skills. And again, it goes back to our assumed constraints of what are people going to think of me? What are people going to say? What if I fail and it doesn't work out? So you need a safe environment. So this program really offers, a chance to share stories, best practices, in transitioning. How do you manage, either in the virtual environment, how do you work with people face to face? Because it's really about both. And as I say, it's based on almost 20 years of helping managers work in the environment. And we've actually got two different options to it, because quite often I know that one time doesn't work for everyone. So either we've got them as sessions in the evening, or we've got them as a 1.5 full day session. So that's just something I wanted to share with you. And, one company that I took this through, Gentech, and, their director of learning and development said to me, about the self-leadership program. He said, self-leadership is a good accountability model, gets people to be responsible. It also helps in the process of removing barriers that prevents individuals from maximizing their contribution. So, that's what one of the companies had to say, and just a little bit more detailed, as I say, they're virtual sessions. We'll end up doing self-assessments. We've got one-on-one conversation planners, workbooks, and the information is also in various languages, because quite often English might not be, or might be your native language. I work with people around Europe, so quite often we're working in German or Italian or in French, and we've got lots of tools to share with them in terms of, that the learning doesn't stop. And I just wanted to quickly share with you, because this is what the learning journey would actually look like. I mean, it consists of the launch, learn, practice, and master process in there, because it's got to encompass everything. And, so we provide people with the learning and development opportunity, but research generally shows that what you learn in a class, unless you actually practice it and continue to practice and master it, well, quite often doesn't work out. So that's just in a bit more detail, some of what you would be getting into and be seeing and learning in the model. So, want to move on to Q&A. Just last one off, before I actually forget, if anyone is interested, generally when I'm out there working with corporate clients, we normally charge around 5,000 euros for a day's training, with their organization. So, I thought, well, if we could at least get, 6-8 people, I want to keep this absolutely small group. I don't have 6 or 8 places today because we've already got a couple signed up. I think I might have 3 places left. But I believe if we can get, a small group integrated, and also what we're going to do is, I believe this training is a value of 2,650 euros. It includes also 3, the sessions, as well as 3 post-training sessions over the next 3 weeks. And you're probably asking, well, why 3 weeks after? And it's because, science has proven that it takes 21 days to build a new habit. So we want to continue weekly reinforcing, practicing, seeing where you're coming along with. And, quite often you're going to find in life there are no guarantees. And that's why I'm also offering a 100% money back satisfaction guarantee. So you come to the first session, you don't like it, you say to me, Robbie, this wasn't for me. I didn't get the value. It's not what I was thinking. And we're done. And I will return and refinance you back. So that's also something to be important. And also for those of you on today, I absolutely want to take it to the next level. So you will also get over the next month 2 hours of free coaching time, so we can practice, learn, apply your skills, and take it to the next level, so that you can get the results, develop the strategies, accomplish the goals, the development goals you want a lot quicker. So as I said, I've got literally 3 seats available that I can do today, and I'm really offering a price drop today of $795. The reason I'm doing that is twofold. Firstly, is because I value your testimony. So, if I give you a price drop, I'm hoping that you'll give me your testimony. I've done that in the past, and I value testimonies. As you can see, I've used it in some of the presentation today. So I'm only offering 3 seats today. And absolutely, the other reason I want to do that is really to inspire more people to take action, And I know it's crazy, because if you think about it, I'm doing this at 30% of what I would normally do. So yeah, it's crazy, but it's absolutely, you're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. And, I really want to inspire and get people to take action faster. And, the first people who are interested in doing that today, if you're interested, just type something in. I'll share my email address with you. But I will also provide, the self-leadership clicks, which is valued at 150. So this is something that you can keep with you. And you've got snippet videos between 1 and 5 minutes on demand. So as you're about to walk into a conversation or as you're tackling a task, these are just quick 5 minute reminders of what we've learned in there. Again, it's to help you master it and keep you going forward. So as I said, we've only got 3 seats, and I will leave it at that one. And if you are interested, then just type in. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to set up a discovery call in the next couple of days, probably 30 to 45 minutes, because I really don't want to sell you anything today. I just want to connect with you. Let's have a talk. Let's see if this is something that's for you, because I might not be the right person for you either. And we have this conversation. If we decide it's a good fit for both of us, then I would expect that we do move forward. So if you're interested, absolutely, just let me know in the chat. Would love to connect with you and go through that and give you some more information. Now, you might be in one of 3 places. You might be going, absolutely, I'm in, great. Or you might be going, no, not for me, but I heard something that I liked, have some questions, let's talk about it. Or the third place you might be, where you're going like, yeah, definitely not for me. That's okay. I appreciate your time. I've loved sharing and chatting with you. And I loved sharing and chatting, and I've really done and had some fun with you guys. So hopefully you've learned, and hopefully you found some value in it. If you've enjoyed this, if you found some value in, just type yes, or just let me know something, just so that maybe I can feel good about myself. Or hopefully you've really found some value in it, and hopefully it's going to be good. So that's just a question there. And yeah, it's really about getting the tactics and the practices. Last one, if you would like more information, link to articles or ebooks along the subject of self-leadership, or you just want an introduction to our next webinar, if you've got, or you want to know more information about, the model that we showed you, absolutely, please just go ahead, connect with me. I'll quickly give you my details again. You can connect with me via email, connect with me via LinkedIn. I promise the QR code will take you to LinkedIn and not somewhere else. So absolutely want to get into the Q&A. But before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to share one last final thought, as we head into the Q&A. In a world that, is really crying out for effective leadership, we need to begin with the most obvious source, which is really ourselves. It's really within. So, the self-leadership journey might be the most important journey you take. And absolutely, now I would love to open it up to a Q&A. It's open questions. So if you've got some questions, please type them in. Would love to hear and answer any of your questions, your thoughts, comments, concerns. This is your time. And while you do that, I'm going to have a quick sip of water because I've forgotten to have a drink. Okay. Just, some of the questions that you might not have asked, and maybe I'll flash back the slide, because quite often, if you like me, I take time to process it. So you might be at home today, the weekend, in the shower or whatever, and you're going, oh, I should have asked this question. Please connect with me and ask the question, because quite often I take some time to process it, and afterwards I think about the question and I've missed, and I feel like I've missed or lost the opportunity. So please don't feel that way. By all means, connect with us and ask us the questions. Some of the questions I quite often get asked, in terms of the self-leadership, and one of them is, being self-leader, or, being a leader within yourself in the normal environment, the face-to-face environment versus the virtual environment. Does that differ? And absolutely it differs, purely because one of the modality that you're working in absolutely differs. And quite often I think that as people, as communicators, as influencers, as leaders, we've gotten away in the face-to-face environment with things that maybe we shouldn't have. And now that we're suddenly virtual and talking to each other through cameras, well, those practices that didn't really work and we got away with, we can't get away with in the virtual environment. So certainly working, communicating in a virtual environment is something very, very different, and, some of the key components around there is, how do we how do we communicate when you don't see a person, you don't have the coffee breaks, you don't have the non-verbal communication, you're missing all of that social element of it. So that is certainly something very, very different. So that's where, as a self-leader, you need to be proactive in connecting with your colleagues, in connecting with your co-workers, with your boss, and asking for feedback, because without the feedback, you don't know how to improve. And at the same time, hopefully your boss and your colleagues will ask you for your feedback, and then you can go away and give them constructive feedback, because quite often feedback can be perceived as being negative, but it's not always meant that way. Because quite often when you give feedback to a loved one, you're giving them because it's good for them. You know what's best for them, but it doesn't always get perceived that way. I got two kids, one's 24 and the other one's almost 20. And feedback is not always perceived as positive as you can imagine. If you've got kids, I'm sure you can relate to it. So, leading self in the virtual environment versus the one-to-one environment is very, very different. And that's the beauty of it. The skills you need to learn, you got to lead yourself before you can lead anyone else around you. Any other questions from anyone? I don't know if Emma's got something, or Will might have. If there's any questions from anyone, would love to answer, or should I give you a couple that just come to my mind, in terms of self-leadership and how we can proactively go out and do things. Because just thinking back, being a self-leader, when I was working in corporate, quite often when you're in a corporate environment matrix, there's no real clear channels. And, if a lot of you, as you're probably involved working in teams, I think probably more than 50% of the time of our work we do is actually involved in teams. So whether it's in a team of 2 or a team of 10, we're probably on, I don't know if you've ever counted, but you're probably on at least 6 or 8 different teams. So, quite often when you're in different teams and there's different team dynamics, as an individual, you are always the same going into these different teams, different environment, different cultures, even times with multinational organizations. But at the end of the day, it's got to be you who's actually being proactive, who's challenging those assumed constraints, who's asking for the feedback, whether it's in a project or one-to-one, because quite often these questions don't get asked. And when these questions don't get asked, it's so easy that we fly over them. We don't ask them. No one else asks them, because we always think that, Jill or James, that they're going to ask, that they should really ask it. It's their project. But the question doesn't get raised for many reasons. So be proactive. Ask the questions. Give the feedback. It makes the difference in the world, because, quite often organizations, initiatives, projects that we're working on, either ourselves or together, the majority of them fail. They either don't deliver or under-deliver what we expect of them. And the statistics are horrible, but we need to change it. But we need to start absolutely with ourselves. So hopefully that's given a little bit more. Again, open to any questions that we might have. If there are no other questions, then that really would end the session. And the only thing I can absolutely say, it's been fun. It's been a pleasure. I hope that you've all learned something. I hope that you will go and challenge some assumed constraints. I hope that you will go and ask for some feedback. Feedback the breakfast of champions, but go and do it. I know it can get uncomfortable, challenging these things, asking for feedback. But at the end of the day, if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. So, that's the only thing I can say is, if you're going to do it now. Because no one else will for you. And, today's the first day of the rest of your life. So go out and, get proactive, take control of your power now. So, all I can say is thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've had a lot of fun. Hopefully you too. And hopefully we will connect again in the near future and see you around on one of the other webinars and exchange some information. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon and the rest of the day, wherever in the world you might be. Thanks, guys.